And joining us now in the studio is ILTV's new editor-in-chief, Maayan Hoffman. Maayan, welcome.
It's great to be here, Lidar. Thank you so much for having me.
So quite a surprising announcement from Biden.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually such a surprise. I think Biden is really navigating this delicate relationship between the U.S. and Israel while he's trying to get ready for the upcoming elections. He knows that his continued support for Israel could actually significantly hurt his support from the younger, more liberal Democratic voter in the United States. And he needs that ceasefire, he needs the hostages home in order to help his chances of going back to the White House. So he hopes that, I think, by making this show of weapons, that he's going to be able to give Israel a little bit of a push there and teach Israel that maybe it wants to go ahead and sign that agreement to get those hostages home and again stop the violence in Gaza.
All right, well,
I think we want to be able to discuss this more. So
absolutely.
In order to do that, we'd actually want to turn in for more detail to our longtime expert, former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren. Welcome, Michael.
Good evening to you both. Hi. Good on.
So, Ambassador Oren, can you explain what is going on here? I mean, is this a pressure tactic from Biden, as Maayan suggested? I mean, what message is Biden trying to send here?
Well, I agree with Maayan that this move by President Biden was not a surprise. It's shocking, but not surprising. It's shocking because it sends a message to Israel. It sends a message to our enemies in the region that Israel is vulnerable. It sends a message to American allies elsewhere in the world that you may not be able to depend on the United States as an ally at the height of a desperate war, and we are certainly in a desperate war. So what would get President Biden, a person I know very well, I worked with him closely, I worked with his staff closely during my time in Washington. He was the vice president back then, a person who cares about Israel. I know he cares about Israel. I know he's deeply committed to the Israel security and the U.S.'s relations. Why would he change? And there are many reasons. It begins with sort of a Democratic Party worldview, which is very different than ours. It's a worldview that has a difficult time with the use of military force. It has a high regard for international organizations like the United Nations. It is particularly concerned with the Palestinian issue. Certainly more tears were shed over Palestinians here than they were shed over Afghanis when America pulled out, or over the 500,000 Syrians who were massacred largely under a Democratic Party watch. So all that combines, and yes, the domestic political situation where President Biden is trailing behind Mr. Trump in most of the polls.
Ambassador, let's talk about this, because not only as you're referencing the polls, but also there are several lawmakers who are apparently very uninformed in advance of the decision to withhold the weapons, and they are against Congress people who are against the decision. So are there any notable responses? I know you've been working very closely with Washington. What are people saying on the ground?
Senators Lindsey Graham, for example, Mitch McConnell, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, have all come out very rigorously against this decision, in support of providing necessary ammunition that Israel will require to defend itself to defeat Hamas. And people are asking a very basic question: how exactly was Israel supposed to defeat Hamas and get our hostages back, when Hamas has rejected what Secretary of State Blinken himself called an extraordinarily generous Israeli offer? And the message to Mr. Sinwar, the head of Hamas, from the United States is, you can just sit there indefinitely, nothing's going to happen to you. We'll hold Israel back. So people are actually very confused by these policies. I personally am confused by these policies because I think that President Biden would like to see Hamas defeated, would like to see very much like to see the hostages released and freed. So it is extremely confusing.
So, I mean, this certainly is seen by many here in Israel as a betrayal. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir even tweeting out, a tweet saying that Biden hearts Hamas. I mean, what does this mean for U.S.-Israel relations moving forward?
Well, I certainly would not sign on to Mr. Ben-Gvir's remarks or tweets about Joe Biden. But I do think that this is a crisis. It may be a turning point in Israel's relationship with the United States, and it deepens the polarization, the political polarization around the Israel issue. Now, we used to be very proud once upon a time that support for Israel was the one truly bipartisan issue in Washington. Now it's becoming the partisan issue par excellence, outstripping even the economy and probably neck and neck with the immigration issue. It is the worst possible scenario for us that one party would be supporting us, another party would be withdrawing from us. And that's probably an oversimplification, because there are a great number of Democrats who are disturbed by this decision as well, and they're making their voices heard. I think it's very important that we make our voices heard. I spent last night making phone calls to American Jewish leaders, urging them to come out publicly against this decision, explaining why it's so dangerous, and dangerous even for the United States, because the great fear of the Biden administration was that the United States would be dragged somehow into a regional conflict. And how do you get dragged into a regional conflict? You send a message to all of Israel's enemies in the region that Israel is weak. Israel's vulnerable. It's fair game. It's open season on Israel. Well, what happens if Hezbollah attacks us tomorrow? What if Iran attacks us tomorrow? If they get that message, well, then the United States is going to find itself embroiled in precisely the conflict it had hoped to avoid. So I think it's what they call in Hebrew a self-goal, or a boomerang. I think it's a very dangerous policy, in addition to being sort of misguided and unfair.
Absolutely. Well, Ambassador Michael Oren, thank you so much for your analysis today.
You can be well, everyone.
And Maayan, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. We are very excited to have you join the ILTV team.
Thank you so much.